That familiar tension builds, doesn't it? Voices rise, not in shared discovery but in defense. Another conversation, perhaps started with curiosity, now teeters on the edge of conflict, hardening into opposing viewpoints with seemingly no bridge between them. Why does exploring different perspectives so often devolve into a battle of egos, leaving us feeling frustrated, misunderstood, or even alienated from one another? We are saturated with information and opinions, flung across digital spaces and dinner tables with unprecedented speed. Yet, does this constant exposure translate into deeper understanding or greater wisdom? Often, it seems the opposite is true. The more we hear, the less we seem to truly listen, retreating into the perceived safety of our own echo chambers, where disagreement is not engaged with but simply walled off, reinforcing our biases. But what if the noise could be quieted? Imagine possessing a framework, a set of mental tools honed over centuries, designed not merely to win arguments but to navigate them with clarity and grace. Consider the possibility that disagreement, approached differently, could become not a source of division, but a powerful engine for intellectual growth and stronger connections, revealing unseen facets of truth hidden within opposing views. This isn't about finding magic words to make everyone agree with you. Instead, it's about unlocking ancient techniques, tested in the rigorous forums of philosophical debate, that allow you to engage with opposing ideas constructively. It's about learning to dissect arguments without resorting to personal attacks, and to understand perspectives so deeply that you can articulate them even better than their proponents, before offering your critique. The path lies not in louder assertion, but in careful inquiry, not in emotional reaction, but in reasoned response. These ancient philosophical keys can transform how you experience disagreement entirely. Are you ready to explore the methods that allow us to seek truth together, even when our starting points differ vastly? Let us delve into the wisdom of the philosophers and uncover how to disagree respectfully and productively. The modern landscape of discourse often resembles a battlefield more than a forum for ideas. Anonymity online can embolden harshness, while algorithms often curate content that confirms our existing beliefs, creating filter bubbles. This polarization makes genuine dialogue incredibly difficult, as we encounter opposing views less often, and when we do, we may perceive them as alien or irrational, rather than simply different interpretations or priorities based on different information. This environment trains us, often unconsciously, to react defensively. When presented with a contrary viewpoint, the instinct is often not curiosity, why do they believe that? But immediate counterattack, here's why they're wrong. This reflex shuts down the possibility of learning and reinforces the adversarial nature of the exchange. The goal shifts from understanding the truth to simply winning the point, a fundamentally unproductive aim in the pursuit of wisdom. The cost of this combative approach is significant. It damages relationships, hinders collaborative problem-solving, and prevents us from benefiting from the collective intelligence that diverse perspectives can offer. When disagreement automatically signals conflict, we lose the opportunity to refine our own thinking, identify flaws in our reasoning, or discover common ground that could lead to innovative solutions or deeper mutual respect despite differing conclusions. Philosophers throughout history faced similar challenges. They engaged with the most profound and contentious questions imaginable: the nature of reality, justice, knowledge, and the good life. Their survival as intellectual traditions depended on developing methods not just for asserting claims, but for rigorously examining them, understanding counterarguments, and engaging in dialogue aimed at uncovering deeper truths, even amidst fundamental disagreements about the world. It is from this rich heritage of structured thought and disciplined inquiry that we can draw invaluable lessons for our own time. These aren't just abstract intellectual exercises. They are practical tools for navigating the complexities of human interaction when perspectives clash. Let's begin exploring these philosophical approaches, starting with a method renowned for its power to cut through assumption and reveal underlying beliefs: the Socratic Method. The Socratic Method, named after the classical Greek philosopher Socrates, is fundamentally about asking questions. Not accusatory questions designed to trap an opponent, but genuine, clarifying questions aimed at understanding. Socrates believed that true wisdom begins with acknowledging one's own ignorance. His method sought to expose the assumptions and inconsistencies within beliefs, prompting deeper reflection rather than immediate opposition. It is a tool for collaborative investigation. In a disagreement, instead of stating "you're wrong because," the Socratic approach prompts questions like, "Could you tell me more about why you hold that view? What definition are you using for that term? What leads you to that conclusion? Or have you considered this alternative perspective?" This shifts the dynamic from confrontation to exploration. It forces the speaker to articulate their reasoning more clearly, sometimes revealing gaps or assumptions even to themselves. Applying this requires genuine curiosity and active listening. You are not merely waiting for your turn to speak or looking for flaws to attack. You are genuinely trying to grasp the other person's framework, their evidence, and their reasoning. This act of seeking to understand in itself can de-escalate tension. It signals respect for the other person as a thinker, even if you ultimately disagree with their conclusion. It builds a foundation for more productive dialogue. The power lies in its subtlety. By asking questions, you guide the conversation towards clarity and logical consistency without making direct accusations. If inconsistencies or weak points exist in the argument, they are more likely to be revealed through the process of articulation prompted by your questions. This allows the other person to potentially revise their view without feeling directly attacked, fostering a space for intellectual honesty. However, questioning alone is not enough. To truly engage respectfully, we must combine Socratic inquiry with another crucial philosophical principle, the principle of charity. This principle guides how we interpret the arguments of others, especially those with whom we disagree, ensuring we engage with the strongest possible version of their position, rather than attacking a distorted caricature. Let's explore its significance. The principle of charity demands that when interpreting someone else's argument, especially if it seems unclear or flawed, we should assume they are rational and select the interpretation that makes their argument strongest or most reasonable. Instead of jumping to conclusions about fallacies or ill intent, we should first ask, what is the most logical or persuasive way to understand what this person is trying to say? This approach directly counters the common tactic of creating a straw man, misrepresenting an opponent's argument to make it easier to attack. Attacking a straw man might score cheap rhetorical points, but it achieves no real understanding and demonstrates disrespect. Applying the principle of charity means engaging with the actual argument in its most robust form, which is essential for any meaningful intellectual exchange. Why adopt this principle? Firstly, it's intellectually honest. If your goal is to genuinely evaluate an idea or pursue truth, you must engage with the idea itself, not a weakened version. Secondly, it's strategically effective. By addressing the strongest form of an argument, your own counterarguments, if successful, become far more convincing and robust. You demonstrate that you've truly grappled with the opposing viewpoint. Furthermore, applying the principle of charity fosters goodwill. When someone feels their position has been fairly understood and represented, even if you still disagree, they are far more likely to remain open to dialogue. It signals that you are interested in understanding their perspective, not just dismissing it. This can transform a potentially adversarial encounter into a collaborative exploration of different viewpoints, building bridges instead of walls. Combining Socratic questioning with the principle of charity creates a powerful foundation for respectful disagreement. You seek to understand deeply, and you ensure you are addressing the strongest version of the other's view. But understanding the argument is only part of the equation. The next crucial step, deeply rooted in philosophical tradition, involves focusing on the argument's structure and evidence, the domain of critical thinking. Critical thinking, a cornerstone of philosophy, involves evaluating arguments based on their logical structure and the quality of the evidence presented, rather than on emotional appeal or the identity of the person making the argument. It asks, do the premises logically support the conclusion? Is the evidence provided relevant, reliable, and sufficient? This objective focus helps detach the idea from the person, reducing the likelihood of personal attacks. When disagreeing, instead of saying, I don't like that conclusion, or only certain kinds of people believe that, focus on the reasoning. You might say, I see the premises you're starting from, but I'm not sure they logically lead to that specific conclusion. Could you explain the connection? Or, the evidence you presented is interesting, but does it account for this counter-evidence? This keeps the discussion centered on the substance of the argument. This requires separating the argument from the arguer. Avoid ad hominem attacks, criticizing the person instead of their reasoning. Whether someone is perceived as likable, intelligent, or belonging to a particular group is irrelevant to the logical validity of their argument. Focusing on logic and evidence maintains intellectual rigor and prevents the conversation from descending into personal insults or tribalism, which are barriers to understanding. Learning to identify common logical fallacies is also crucial. Fallacies are errors in reasoning that weaken an argument, such as appeals to emotion, false dilemmas, or hasty generalizations. Recognizing these, both in others' arguments and potentially in our own, allows for more precise and constructive critique. Pointing out a specific fallacy in reasoning is far more productive than simply declaring an argument bad or wrong. Engaging with logic and evidence requires mental effort and discipline. It's often easier to react emotionally or dismiss opposing views based on superficial judgments. However, this disciplined focus is essential for productive disagreement. Coupled with inquiry and charity, it forms a robust framework. Yet, there's another vital philosophical virtue needed: the awareness of our own fallibility, known as epistemic humility. Epistemic humility is the recognition that our own knowledge and understanding are inherently limited and potentially flawed. It involves acknowledging that we might be wrong, even about beliefs we hold strongly. This doesn't mean abandoning conviction, but rather holding our beliefs with an openness to revision in the face of better evidence or reasoning. It's the opposite of dogmatism or intellectual arrogance. In a disagreement, epistemic humility encourages us to genuinely consider that the other person might have access to information we lack, or might possess a valid perspective we haven't considered. It tempers the urge to simply assert our correctness and fosters a willingness to learn from the exchange. Instead of aiming solely to persuade, we also become open to being persuaded, or at least to refining our own understanding. This humility makes it easier to admit when we don't know something, or when a point made by the other person is valid. Saying, "That's a good point, I hadn't considered that," or "I need to think more about that aspect," is not a sign of weakness, but of intellectual strength and honesty. It builds trust and encourages reciprocity, making the other person more likely to acknowledge the limits of their own view as well. Cultivating epistemic humility requires self-reflection. It means consciously questioning our own assumptions, biases, and the sources of our beliefs. Are we holding on to a view out of habit, emotion, or group affiliation, rather than sound reasoning? This internal check helps us enter disagreements with greater intellectual integrity and a genuine openness to discovering truth, wherever it may lie, rather than just defending our current position. Socratic questioning, charity, logical focus, and epistemic humility provide the intellectual framework. However, disagreements often become heated due to emotional reactions. Managing these is crucial for maintaining respectful dialogue. Here, the ancient wisdom of Stoicism offers powerful guidance on emotional regulation, teaching us to respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively when challenged or provoked. Stoicism teaches that while we cannot control external events, including what others say or believe, we can control our judgments and responses to them. Getting angry or defensive in an argument often stems from perceiving disagreement as a personal attack or threat. The Stoics argued that such emotional responses are based on faulty judgments and hinder rational thought, which is our highest faculty. When faced with disagreement, a Stoic approach involves pausing before reacting. Recognize any rising feelings of anger, frustration, or defensiveness not as commands to act, but as signals to examine your own judgments. Ask yourself, is this disagreement truly harmful? Is my ego being threatened, or is an idea simply being challenged? Can I respond based on reason rather than passion? This pause creates space for a more measured response. Maintaining composure allows you to continue applying the other philosophical tools effectively. It's hard to practice Socratic questioning, charity, or logical analysis when overcome by anger. Emotional regulation keeps your mind clear, allowing you to listen actively, evaluate arguments fairly, and express your own views calmly and coherently. It prevents the conversation from derailing into unproductive emotional venting or personal attacks. This doesn't mean suppressing emotions entirely or becoming robotic. It means acknowledging emotions without being ruled by them. It involves choosing a response aligned with your values. In this case, the values of respectful dialogue, truth-seeking, and intellectual honesty, rather than being swept away by immediate impulses. It is a discipline that strengthens with practice, enhancing not just disagreements but all areas of life. These philosophical principles, Socratic inquiry, charity, logical focus, epistemic humility, and Stoic emotional regulation, form a powerful toolkit. Now, let's translate these concepts into concrete, practical tips you can implement immediately to transform your approach to disagreement and foster more constructive conversations in your daily life, bridging the gap between ancient wisdom and modern interaction. First and foremost, listen actively. This goes beyond merely hearing words. It involves truly concentrating on, understanding, responding to, and remembering what is being said. Put away distractions, make eye contact if appropriate, nod to show engagement, and resist the urge to formulate your rebuttal while the other person is still speaking. Reflect back what you heard, so, if I understand correctly, you're saying, to ensure comprehension before responding. Seek common ground, even amidst significant disagreement. Explicitly stating points of agreement can build rapport and establish a foundation of shared understanding before tackling contentious issues. Acknowledging shared values or goals. We both seem to agree that X is important, even if we differ on how to achieve it. Can frame the disagreement as a collaborative problem-solving effort rather than a zero-sum conflict. Clearly distinguish points of agreement from points of disagreement. After listening charitably, articulate precisely where your perspectives align and where they diverge. I agree with you on A and B, but I see C differently because. This precision helps focus the discussion on the specific areas needing exploration, preventing the conversation from becoming a vague clash of overall positions. Clarity reduces misunderstanding. Use I statements to express your perspective, rather than accusatory you statements. Saying, I feel confused by that point, or from my perspective, the evidence suggests, is less likely to provoke defensiveness than saying, you are confusing, or your evidence is wrong. I statements own your perspective and feelings without directly attacking the other person, fostering a less adversarial tone. Avoid inflammatory language, sarcasm, hyperbole, and personal insults. These tactics derail rational discussion and escalate emotional tension. Stick to neutral, objective language when describing points of disagreement. Focus on the substance of the ideas, not on attacking the character or intelligence of the person expressing them. Remember, the goal is understanding and intellectual exploration, not scoring points or venting frustration. Be willing to pause the conversation if it becomes too heated or unproductive. Recognizing when dialogue is breaking down is a sign of wisdom. Suggest taking a break, revisiting the topic later with cooler heads, or agreeing to disagree respectfully if an impasse is reached. Pushing through intense emotional friction rarely leads to positive outcomes. Strategic retreat can preserve the relationship and allow for later reflection. Remember that winning isn't the goal. In philosophical dialogue, success isn't measured by convincing the other person, but by the quality of the inquiry, the clarity achieved. the respect maintained, and the potential for mutual learning. Shift your internal objective from victory to understanding. This mental reframe fundamentally changes your approach and significantly increases the likelihood of a productive outcome for everyone involved. Ask clarifying questions relentlessly but gently. Before you critique, ensure you fully understand. Could you elaborate on that point? What do you mean by that specific term? Am I understanding you correctly when I say? This echoes the Socratic method and ensures you are responding to their actual position, thanks to the principle of charity, avoiding misunderstandings that fuel conflict. Acknowledge valid points made by the other side. Even if you disagree with the overall conclusion, recognizing the strength of certain arguments or the validity of specific pieces of evidence demonstrates fairness and intellectual honesty. You make a strong case regarding X, even though I arrive at a different conclusion because of Y. This builds credibility and shows you are engaging seriously with their perspective. Finally, know when further discussion is futile. If the other party is unwilling to engage respectfully, resorts consistently to fallacies or personal attacks, or shows no openness to considering alternative views despite your best efforts, continuing the argument may be pointless. Sometimes, the most respectful action is to politely disengage, preserving your own peace of mind and recognizing the limits of productive dialogue in that specific instance. Integrating these philosophical approaches and practical tips transforms disagreement from a potential source of conflict into a valuable opportunity. It becomes a chance to sharpen our own reasoning, deepen our understanding of complex issues, gain insight into different ways of seeing the world, and build stronger, more resilient relationships based on mutual intellectual respect, even when consensus isn't reached. The Socratic method teaches us the power of questioning to uncover assumptions. The principle of charity guides us to engage with the best version of others' arguments. Critical thinking demands focus on logic and evidence, separating person from idea. Epistemic humility reminds us of our own fallibility and fosters openness. Stoic principles help us maintain composure amidst intellectual challenge, keeping dialogue rational and respectful. This approach isn't about finding agreement necessarily, but about improving the quality of disagreement. It elevates conversation beyond mere opinion swapping or ego battling into a shared process of inquiry. When we engage this way, even if we walk away holding different views, we likely walk away with a clearer understanding of both our own position and the position of others, having potentially learned something valuable in the process. Embracing respectful disagreement requires practice and conscious effort. It means resisting ingrained habits of defensiveness and tribalism. But the rewards are substantial: clearer thinking, reduced conflict, enhanced learning, and the potential to bridge divides in an increasingly polarized world. It is an investment in not only our intellectual growth, but also the health of our relationships and our communities. The wisdom of the philosophers offers timeless guidance. By adopting their methods for inquiry, interpretation, reasoning, humility, and emotional regulation, we equip ourselves not just to argue better, but to understand more deeply and connect more meaningfully, even across lines of difference. The challenge lies not in changing others' minds, but in mastering our own approach to the inevitable and potentially fruitful landscape of disagreement. So the next time you find yourself entering a discussion where views diverge, pause, recall these principles. Choose inquiry over assertion, charity over caricature, logic over emotion, humility over certainty, composure over reaction. Ask yourself not how can I win this argument, but rather, how can we explore this difference respectfully and what can I learn? The quality of our discourse depends on these conscious choices.